You won't believe what just happened in the Senate today. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez openly mocked Senator John Neely Kennedy's stance on education, right to his face. But Kennedy's response wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a masterclass in dignity, wit, and Southern intellect. The chamber fell silent. Social media erupted. And here's why. What was supposed to be a routine Senate hearing on public education reform, featuring lawmakers, education experts, and a sea of cameras, suddenly veered into something far more explosive. Everyone expected debate. No one expected a showdown. Before we dive in, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future moments like this. The Senate chamber was thick with anticipation, the only sounds the soft rustle of papers and shifting chairs. AOC sat upright, her sleek black hair tied high, eyes flashing with intensity. She wasn't just prepared, she was loaded with facts, fire, and the kind of sharpness that made her a progressive icon. With over 13 million followers, she knew the power of every word she spoke. Her mission today: to transform a policy discussion into a pointed ideological challenge. Not just to the GOP, but specifically to the Southern conservative values Kennedy embodied. Senator Kennedy had just finished his remarks. In his warm, distinctive drawl, he defended cutting federal spending, calling for leaner budgets and more parental choice in education. His tone was calm, his points clear: let families choose, don't let bureaucracy choke excellence. The message was simple, but it landed. A few senators nodded in agreement. Then AOC stood up. Cameras snapped toward her, lights gleaming against her poised expression. She didn't hesitate. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice sharp and vibrant, "we're discussing the futures of millions of children. But I have to wonder, should we take seriously opinions drawn from front porch anecdotes instead of actual educational research?" Gasps and murmurs swept the chamber. Her gaze found Kennedy, a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips, not quite sarcastic, but certainly a challenge. It's hard to believe someone can lead this debate when their understanding of education seems to come from campfire tales in Louisiana rather than peer-reviewed scholarship. Some clapped. Others groaned. The room split, tension mounting. AOC went on, attacking Kennedy's support for budget cuts as an assault on underserved communities. Every line was crafted for virality. This wasn't just about education, it was a declaration of war between progressivism and traditional conservatism. And AOC wanted the public to choose sides. When she concluded, "We need real solutions, not fairy tales," she sat down, eyes locked on Kennedy, as if daring him to strike back. The room froze. All eyes turned to Kennedy. He sat motionless in his navy blue suit and deep red tie, resembling a small-town farmer ready to share a quiet story. But behind that calm exterior was a razor-sharp mind, trained at Vanderbilt, Virginia Law, and Oxford. The folksy accent had fooled people before. It wouldn't today. Kennedy leaned forward slightly, tapping one finger on the desk. A signal to those who knew him, he was focused now. The corners of his mouth curled into a subtle smile, as if he'd just heard a joke unworthy of reply. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every crease and glint of light on his glasses. Still, he said nothing. And that silence held the room in suspense. Ted Cruz, a few seats away, smirked knowingly. AOC's supporters whispered among themselves, certain she had struck a blow. Even staffers paused, sensing something was building. But Kennedy's silence wasn't hesitation, it was strategy. A calculated pause, the kind a seasoned debater takes before landing the final blow. He knew this wasn't just about AOC's insult. It was about defending millions of Americans like the ones back home in Louisiana. People mocked for their accents, their values, their towns. He took a deep breath. The tapping stopped. He placed his hand on the microphone. A small movement, but one that made the room inhale together, sensing something big was coming. Kennedy didn't just want to strike back. He wanted to elevate the moment. To take it beyond politics. Beyond ideology. Back to the heart of the issue, the future of American children. He tilted his head slightly, meeting AOC's gaze, not with anger, but with the calm resolve of a teacher about to correct a misguided student. Even her confidence wavered, just slightly, as if she sensed this wasn't going to end the way she thought. He cleared his throat. Just a small sound, but it shattered the silence. And then, in his slow, honeyed drawl, Senator Kennedy began to speak as sharp as a blade. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez," Kennedy began, his gaze unwavering. "I grew up in Louisiana, where folks do tell stories on porches, as you said. But I also studied at Vanderbilt, Virginia, and Oxford, where I learned that wisdom isn't about showing off. It's about using it to help others." The room went silent, save for the scribble of journalists' pens. He paused, letting his words settle like dust after a storm. A faint smile played on his lips, not smug, but assured, like a man who knew the room had just shifted. "I'm not here to argue about folklore or degrees," he continued, his tone calm but grounded. "I'm here for the kids in Louisiana, in the Bronx, across this country. Kids who need an education that lifts them up, not lofty words that rack up likes on social media." His words hit their target, directed at AOC's strategy yet wrapped in sincerity. In the back, conservative senators nodded, eyes gleaming with pride. Across the aisle, AOC's earlier supporters grew quieter, hands gripping their armrests, sensing the tone of the debate had turned. Even the education experts in the guest section exchanged glances. Kennedy wasn't just defending himself, he was reshaping the entire conversation. With the poise of someone equally at home in the Oxford Union and a Louisiana town hall, Kennedy pivoted to substance. "We could spend all day arguing about where we studied," he said, adding a hint of humor. "But that won't help one single child stuck in a broken school system. I want parents to have the power to choose what's best for their kids. If you call that folklore, well, I call it common sense." His words weren't just rebuttal, they were a call to action. His voice deepened as he leaned slightly forward. "In Louisiana, we're taught you don't have to shout to be right. Dignity doesn't need to be flaunted. It's something you show, through action." The room erupted in applause, not just from his conservative colleagues, but from a few neutral senators now moved by his authenticity. AOC, seated across from him, remained upright and composed, but a faint tightening of her lips revealed a flicker of surprise. She hadn't expected the man with the folksy drawl to turn her mockery into a masterclass. In the gallery, her supporters exchanged anxious looks while others hastily tapped defenses into their phones. Journalists captured every word, aware this would soon flood headlines. Kennedy sat down slowly, still calm, as if what had just occurred was nothing unusual. But the chamber felt transformed. As the applause faded, all that remained was a heavy silence, one charged with the weight of what had just transpired. Cameras swung to AOC, anticipating her response. She gave a slight nod, her eyes locking back onto Kennedy, not defeated, but reassessing. This wasn't just a personal victory for Kennedy. It was a statement. A reminder that statesmanship doesn't require volume, it requires principle. He had taken her mockery and turned it into a defense of deeper values, wisdom, dignity, and the responsibility leaders owe to the next generation. But the fight wasn't over. Ocasio-Cortez, small in stature but burning with intensity, felt the heat of millions watching online. Social media exploded, Kennedy just scored big. But AOC wasn't one to back down. Her eyes gleamed with renewed fire. She brushed her sleeve, rose, and requested to speak. The camera lights bathed her face in a sharp glow. Her sleek black hair, tied high, swayed slightly as she leaned into the microphone. "Senator Kennedy," she began, her voice ringing with controlled force, "I don't doubt your journey, from the porches of Louisiana to the lecture halls of Oxford. But policy isn't about degrees. It's about commitment to the most vulnerable." She paused, letting the silence do some of the work. A sharp smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The chamber stirred. Her supporters clapped again, this time louder. Some conservative senators, previously emboldened, now narrowed their eyes. "What you call school choice may sound nice," she continued, raising her hand like a conductor, "but in practice, it leaves millions of kids behind, kids in neighborhoods where schools are underfunded and opportunity is scarce. When you speak of common sense, I have to ask, whose? Those who can afford private schools, or the families just trying to make sure their kids eat breakfast?" Her words sliced through the air. They weren't just a rebuttal, they were an indictment. AOC stepped forward slightly, her eyes sweeping the room. "We don't need slogans. We need schools that work, for everyone. I come from the Bronx, where education isn't a debate topic. It's a lifeline. And I'm not here to go viral. "I'm here to fight for kids who can't afford to be forgotten." The crowd responded, this time with roaring applause. Not just online, but in the room. AOC had reclaimed the momentum. She knew Kennedy had landed a powerful blow. But she wasn't here to retreat. She was here to fight for equity, and to remind America that behind her fiery delivery was deep conviction. Her closing words echoed like a drumbeat. "We need policies that put kids first, not theories that sound good but fall flat in the real world," she said, voice tightening with emotion. "If you want to debate, bring solutions, not stories." She sat down, eyes still locked on Kennedy, daring him to continue. The chamber was electric. Cameras cut to Kennedy, who sat composed, his hand resting lightly on the table. His eyes were thoughtful now, the faintest smile crossing his lips, not mocking, but as if acknowledging her strength. The chamber settled into a heavy silence, charged with anticipation. All eyes turned to Senator John Neely Kennedy. Across from him, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat upright, her eyes still blazing, like a warrior who had landed a decisive blow and was waiting for her opponent's next move. But Kennedy, calm as a quiet river after a storm, was in no rush. He gently placed his hand on the table, his composed gaze scanning the room like a man weighing every stone before building a bridge. Then he rose slowly, deliberately, like a Louisiana farmer stepping into a field after a rain. The camera lights caught the faint wrinkles near his eyes, signs of a man who had weathered battles before. He adjusted the microphone, a simple act that silenced the entire chamber. A slight smile crossed his lips, not arrogant, but assured. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez," he began, his voice warm and resonant like a church bell on a still morning. "I hear what you're saying about the Bronx, about kids who need good schools. I agree, we must put kids first. But I come from Louisiana, where we've learned that throwing money at a problem doesn't always fix it." His words, plain-spoken yet precise, cut through the tension like a velvet-wrapped arrow. No attacks. Just steady reasoning. A few conservative senators nodded subtly, pride flickering in their eyes. Some of AOC's supporters, so energetic moments earlier, shifted in their seats, visibly affected. Journalists typed rapidly, sensing the moment would soon set the internet ablaze. Kennedy raised one hand gently, signaling he wasn't done. "We could debate policy all day," he continued, now with a touch of humor, like a storyteller by the fire. "But I believe the best way to help kids isn't with fancy words or grand plans. It's giving parents a choice. Making sure schools run efficiently. Letting teachers teach, without being buried under red tape." He turned to AOC again, his gaze calm but unwavering. The story of AOC and Kennedy was more than a verbal sparring match. It was a reminder of deeper values of how to face conflict while maintaining respect. AOC, with her fiery passion and fierce commitment, represented a generation hungry for change. Raised in the Bronx where public schools often lack resources, she brought to the hearing an authentic perspective shaped by personal experience. Her passion, amplified through social media, inspired millions of young people who see her as a champion, challenging the status quo. Though her initial jab may have been seen as overstepping, her resilient counterattack proved she's not just a politician chasing the spotlight, but a warrior fighting for forgotten communities. This confrontation, while not an outright victory for her, solidified her image as a voice that cannot be silenced. Kennedy, in contrast, embodied a rare political style in the noisy age of social media, with his warm southern drawl and composure honed at Vanderbilt, Virginia, and Oxford. He turned an insult into an opportunity to speak on timeless values, wisdom without showboating, dignity proven through action. He represented everyday Americans, often underestimated for their accents or origins. His call for cooperation over conflict resonated with those yearning for a less divided politics where ideas trump drama. This event, with all its drama, left a profound lesson about facing conflict. AOC, with her explosive energy, reminded us that politics is a fire that must be kindled to drive change. Kennedy, with his calm, proved that true strength sometimes lies in restraint, in the ability to listen and respond without belittling an opponent. Both, in their own ways, brought to life a debate about education, turning it into a broader dialogue about responsibility, fairness, and hope for future generations. The story of the clash between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and John N. Kennedy in the 2025 Senate hearing was not just a political sparring match, but a mirror reflecting core values. Applicable to life in America today in a deeply divided society where debates often devolve into personal attacks, this story offers a profound lesson on handling conflict with respect and effectiveness. AOC, with her fierce passion and commitment to defending vulnerable communities like the Bronx, showed the power of speaking out for fairness, especially when she countered with data and personal stories about underfunded public schools. Kennedy, with his calm and sharp reasoning, proved that dignity and sincerity, like his call for cooperation over bickering, can rise above jabs like the Louisiana folklore quip. The social media explosion reflected how networks amplify conflict but also showed Americans' hunger for meaningful dialogue. The lesson from this story is in life, whether at work, school, or in the community, we can learn from both AOC and Kennedy to handle conflict. Combine AOC's passion standing up for what you believe in, like her fight for poor children, with Kennedy's calm listening and responding with reason over emotion instead of personal attacks. Like AOC's initial jab, focus on solutions, like Kennedy's push for school choice in a polarized America, turn debates into opportunities for understanding, as both ultimately aimed for a shared goal, the future of children. Share your ideas with sincerity and you'll build bridges instead of walls. Subscribe to the channel to catch more fiery debates like AOC and Kennedy, and share your thoughts on education in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video with more inspiring political stories.